Hello, everyone. In this video, we're going to be going over if statements in Java. Essentially, if statements are a way to make a decision based off of a certain condition. But before we get into if statements, let's get into the different types of comparisons that we're going to be using in coming up with conditions. So there's six main ones we're going to talk about here. Starting off with equals, that is two equal signs. Note that that is not double equals is not the same thing as the regular equal sign. The two equal signs checks and the single equal sign assigns. So moving on to does not equal, that is an exclamation mark along with an equal sign in one string without spaces. So that means it's not equal. As you see in grade school, the right caret is equal to less than, and then the left caret is equal to greater than. So as an example, 4 is greater than 2 for greater than, and 5 is less than 10. How you do less than or equal to in Java is a little different than you do on paper. Instead of putting the line underneath the caret, it's the caret and then the equal sign. So less than or equal to is right caret equal sign, and then greater than or equal to is left caret equal sign. Okay, so now that we have an understanding of comparisons, let's move on to what an if statement is. So the basic form of an if statement is if condition, and we'll see some examples of that, curly brackets, you indent, and then you some code, and then we close the curly brackets. So the curly brackets encompass some line of code. It can be many lines of code, in fact. So for example, this checks if the number that we enter is greater than 0. If it is true, it prints a message. So since let's say we enter 1 as a number, it will print this out. But if not, if that condition is not satisfied, this line of code will be skipped. Okay, so next is the if-else statement. So this is an addition to the if statement that gives us two different scenarios. So it's either going to be true or false. So let's say if condition, and then we close the parenthesis, the curly brace, and then we add an else. And then with some other line of code. You can think of else as an otherwise, right? So for example, this example checks to see if a number is even or odd. So if the number, if the remainder of that number divided by 2 is equal to 0, then we're going to print out that's an even number. Otherwise, it must be an odd number. So we're going to print that out. You can branch this even more by putting multiple if statements in one thing. So for example, we're checking to see if the number we enter is positive, negative, or 0. So the first case we're going to run to is if the number is greater than 0. If that's the case, then we're going to print out that message, and we will skip these two other things and go straight to line 49. But if it's not greater than 0, we're going to go to the next case, else if number is less than 0. So if that's the case, it will print out that's negative number, and then skip to line 49. But if we go through both of these conditions and we just run into the else, it prints out 0 because it must be 0, right? That think of else as, in this case, think of it as a default case. So next, you can also apply this to be nested if statements. So we're going to output um, we're going to output if the number is positive and even or odd at the same time, right? So first of all, we can't get to this point if the number is negative. So first we have to check to see if the number is positive or greater than 0. If that's the case, we can go into this line of code. But now we want to see whether it's even or odd. So at that point, we repeat this code here to see if the number, if the remainder of the number in 2 is 0. It's a positive even number. Otherwise, it's a positive odd number. But obviously, if the number is negative, then we skip to line 59. Next, we're going to talk about logical operators. So this is for if our condition, we need to check to see if two things or at least one thing is true. So and, instead of writing the word and, it's 2 ampersands. And then or is represented by 2 vertical bars. So here, for example, is we're seeing if, for this one, if the user is eligible to work. So what this is saying is if the user is at least 18, because note the greater than or equal sign, and the user is less than 60. At that point, we display the message. Next example is seeing if the is going to see if the user is not in working age range. So this one is saying if the user is under 18 or the user is greater than 60. As a correction here, less than or equal to 60. So for this one, if the user is under 18 or the user is greater than 60, probably say older than 60, we display the message. Lastly, we have the question mark. So this is useful shorthand for simple if-else statements. So we're doing the same thing as in example 1 here. We're defining a string as a result is equal to, first of all, it's the condition, right? So it's going to be the condition, question mark, and then the question is if it's the true string and the false string. So as you can see here, if the number is 1, if it's greater than 0, the positive message is going to print out. So the first one. If not, the second one's going to print out, non-positive. So let's run this program. And let's take a look at our outputs. So we're going to enter in a number, let's say 10 to start off with. Going in the first example, the number is positive because it's greater than 0. Our second example, 10 is an even number because this condition is satisfied. So line 37 skipped. For our third example, the first line, the first condition is satisfied. So line 43 is printed, and all the way from 44 through 48 is skipped. For a fourth example, we're checking to see if it's a positive even number, which it is here. So first of all, it checks to see if 10 is greater than 0. Since that's the case, we move on to the inside and we do the same thing as before. So 10, remainder 10 divided by 2 is 0. So we print out positive even number. And then we skip lines 55 through 58. For a fifth example, we're checking to see if uh, the a 10-year-old is eligible for work. So let's go through the condition here. So if number is greater than or equal to 18, well, we can stop right then because the number is 10. And you need this one and this statement to work. So line 64 through 65 are skipped. And then for this one, if number is less than 18, so 10 is less than 18, and at that point we can move on because it's an or. So since this one's true, we can print out line 68 and then move on to our last example. So our result is, so as 10 is greater than 0, so the positive string is going to be used for this result, as you can see. Let's run it again, and let's test it with a negative number. So as you can see here, since negative 10 is not less than 0, the number is positive message is not even going to display. And then our second example, since negative 10 over 2 is 5 with a negative 5 with a remainder of 0, the even number message is going to display. For the next example, negative 10 is not greater than 0, so we're going to move on to the next option. And then negative 10 is less than 0, so it's going to result in a negative number being printed. Our next example, if negative 10 is greater than 0, well, it's not, so this whole thing is going to be skipped. And then last, for 6, no, none of these are going to print out because the negative 10 does not satisfy that. But for 6, we have negative 10 is not greater than 0, so the second message is going to display, as you can see. So I hope this video was informative. Please feel free to comment if you have any questions. Otherwise, have a great day, and thank you for watching.